Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the pretty amazing world of yaks. Specifically, we're going to talk about what it actually takes to feed these incredibly tough animals. So let's get right into it. Think about that for a second. What does it take to fuel a half-ton animal living in altitudes where most creatures can't even breathe? Yaks evolved in some of the most intense environments on Earth. So to really understand how to raise them successfully on a farm, we've got to go back to the source. We have to look at what they were designed to eat in the wild. Okay, so let's start right there, with their natural diet. Before we can figure out what to put in a feed trough on a farm, we have to understand the menu that nature perfected for them over thousands of years up in those high mountains. And would you look at that, it's not just one thing. Yaks aren't simple lawnmowers, they're what we call browsers. They need a real mix of stuff. You've got high-fiber grasses that give them bulk, then you've got these protein-rich legumes like clover that help them grow, and they'll even eat woody shrubs and other plants to get through those long, sparse winters. It's a whole buffet. So what's the big lesson here for anyone raising yaks? It's simple. Variety is everything. Yaks are not picky eaters, but they need that diversity. A pasture with just one type of grass? That's kind of like trying to live on nothing but bread. It's just not going to cut it. For yak, variety really is the secret sauce to good health. All right, so we know they need variety, but what are they actually getting from all those different plants? What's the science behind it? Let's decode that nutritional blueprint and see what it takes to build a healthy, happy herd. When you boil it all down, it comes back to these 5 key things. Protein, that's the building block, right? For growth, for milk, for new calves. Energy, well, that's the fuel in the tank, keeping them moving and, really importantly, keeping them warm. Then you have vitamins and minerals. Think of them as the maintenance crew, supporting everything from bone strength to their immune system. And of course, water. Clean, fresh water is totally non-negotiable. But of all those nutrients, there is one that stands out as the absolute king: fiber. Yaks are ruminants, which means they have this incredible multi-chambered stomach. You can almost picture their rumen as this heavy-duty internal compost system. And it absolutely has to have a constant supply of roughage, of fiber, to keep that whole engine running smoothly. But what happens when that beautiful, varied pasture is buried under a foot of snow? You can't just rely on grazing year-round in most places. That's where supplemental feeding comes in. It's all about bridging that nutritional gap when winter decides to show up. So this is basically the farmer's toolkit for the colder months. Hay is the go-to, right? It provides that essential fiber we just talked about. Silage is another great option. It's fermented, so it's packed with nutrients. Grain. Now, grain you have to be careful with. It's a great energy boost, but too much can really mess with their digestive system. And finally, you have mineral supplements, which are just there to fill in any gaps that the local soil might be missing. You can really see the 2 totally different approaches here. Summer is a feast, right? It's all about fresh, high-protein pasture and just letting them graze freely. Winter, on the other hand, is all about maintenance. You're using that stored feed to give them enough energy to stay warm and just to keep them in good shape until the grass starts growing again. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. A yak's diet isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. How you feed them really depends on what your goal is. Are you raising them for milk, for meat, for fiber? Let's take a look. So if you're aiming for milk production, those nutritional needs just skyrocket. You've got to give them way more protein and a lot more energy to fuel that whole process. Honestly, it's just like the slide says. It's like putting premium fuel into a high-performance engine. Better inputs are going to give you better outputs. Simple as that. Now, if meat production is the goal, your focus shifts to efficient muscle growth. For most of their life, that means really high-quality grasses and forages. Then, sometimes in that final finishing stage, you might add a little bit of graining to help with weight gain and marbling. And what about that famous, incredibly soft yak down? You might think there's some secret supplement, but nope. The secret is just fantastic overall health. A well-balanced diet with plenty of protein and all the right minerals is what produces that beautiful, luxurious coat. A healthy animal on the inside leads to high-quality fiber on the outside. Okay, so we've covered the adults, but what about the little ones, the calves? They have their own very specific nutritional needs. And getting this stage right is absolutely critical for their entire life. It's really a free step dance. First up, colostrum. That first milk from the mom is basically liquid gold. It's packed with antibodies that jumpstart the calf's immune system. After that, it's about making a really slow, gradual switch from milk to solid foods like hay. This step is so important because it's what develops their rumen, getting it ready for a lifetime of digesting tough, fibrous plants. This quote from the source material really just says it all, doesn't it? Proper feeding isn't just about keeping them alive. It is the absolute foundation for their health, their growth, and their productivity. If you get the food right, pretty much everything else will follow. So what does that look like in the real world? Well, it means you have to be observant. Use your eyes. Check on your animal's body condition all the time. Be super careful with things like grain to avoid problems. Watch how they behave. A yak that suddenly stops eating is often the very first sign that something's wrong. And last but not least, don't forget the basics. Clean, fresh water, always. And all of this brings us to one last, much bigger question. When you think about their amazing efficiency, their resilience, their ability to thrive on diverse pasture instead of a ton of resource-heavy grains, you really have to wonder, could this humble, low-impact animal actually be a key player in the future of sustainable, small-scale farming? It's definitely some food for thought.
Want to raise healthy, profitable yaks without beginner mistakes? Get How to Raise Yaks by Gerard Dawn, your step-by-step guide to successful yak farming. Link below.